Video is going to cover example 020, which is some basic demonstrations of control structures and basic programming mechanisms in R, my standard header, and let's go. So, start at the top. I've got a handful of comments of giving me the ID number for this. First thing I'm going to do is release what's called syncs. We're going to cover syncs in a different video on outputting things to files. But the way that R works is it uses this command called sync to change where the output is going. Does the output of the program get spit out to the console down here, or does it go to a file? Calling the sync with nothing spits it back to the console. During certain debugging operations, you may end up where you've told it to output to several files, and you want to, just as a good practice in the beginning of all your programs, again, this, if I didn't say it already, I'm working through a standard header here, which would be a good start to all your programs. This just clears up anything that might have it possibly outputting to a file. The next thing we're going to do is you'll notice that I have no variables in my environment. The reason I do that is that I run this command remove basically everything, which purges all of the variables from my system. Now, the reason that I do that at the beginning of every program is that I may be working on different versions of stuff. There may be stuff left over from somewhere else. This just gets me to a nice clean starting point, because one of the things that I'm going to do is that I don't, while R does the really cool thing where you can run one line at a time and you can run things out of order and all that fancy stuff, everything that I'm going to do is going to be called what's called run from source, which is this Control-Shift-S. What this does is that this is going to run my entire program from top to bottom completely. The reason that I do that, and it's a good practice to work like this, is that it's assumed that anything you're doing is going to be something where you don't just sit down one afternoon, write the whole dang thing, and you're done. You're going to work on it for a while, you're going to go review some data, you're going to stare at it for a while, you're going to come back to it a day or two later, you may do a second or third or fourth replication of stuff, and you're going to have some old code. If you always do the run from source, the Control-Shift-S to run, and run the whole program, that means that all of your code, as you've written it, is intact, it's good, it's solid, it works. If you are just kind of cherry picking through lines and changing things on the fly and adding a few commands in the console to just touch stuff up, when you come back to it with the next replication worth of data, you may have lost that information. So by running everything all at once, we know that it's going to run the same way every time. The other reason is that R does something a little bit weird when it comes to certain types of warnings, where it'll pick up things that, picked up that it was reading in some values that weren't quite right, but it'll just carry on. And it'll let you get away with some really horrific faults that are going to be called warnings if you're just running with like a Control-Alt-B to run to the end of a line, or if you're running line by line. It'll let you get away with that. Running with Control-Shift-S as your command won't let you get away with bad things. So the first question you're probably going to ask me then is, so how do I stop in the middle? Because, well, I've got a long program I'm working on and I only want to do some of it. So I'm just going to make a quick variable. I'm going to say my var equals 5. So now I've got a variable in here. I'm going to click in this column over here, this white space. I'm setting what's called a breakpoint. So I'm going to, on my keyboard, hit Control-Shift-S. And what that did was the program ran to the breakpoint. It's highlighting where it stopped. And now I have options of how I can go. I can hit continue, which is going to run to the end. Or I can hit next and just run one line at a time. And now I'm going to hit next again. And I did the remove, clear my workspace. Life is good. I'm going to stop this just to stop it from highlighting. One of the things that R does, we're going to look at this next pair of things, next two things as a pair, is that R always likes to work out of what's called a working directory. Now, again, from the concept of you're going to be working on stuff over months, and you're going to have a lot of changes to things. If you keep all of your .r source files and all your data in one directory, let's say you do experiment 1 or replication 1 of your experiment. You finish it off, now you want to go to replication 2. What you can do is you can just make copy and paste that entire directory, and that'll bring your R file with it, and name them like version 1 or version 2 or whatever the heck you want. And R is always going to work out of that current working directory. What this statement here, this complex set working directory statement does, is that it looks up the path where this specific file is being executed from and sets that to your working directory. So like, let's say that you've got some data file with like experiment 2 data, and you need to do some manipulation on it because you think that when something got entered, it got a little bit screwed up, but you don't want to touch the original file. Just copy the whole dang directory, and then the R file comes with it, and run the whole thing from there. So like if we look at my training directory, let's say I've got, we'll just say parsing.r, and we'll say experiment 1 data. I can take the 2 of these, make a new directory, copy the pair of these in there. And I'm going to copy that again. I'm going to come in here and let's say I manipulated this experiment data. So I've got first copy in new, second copy in new dash copy. I can manipulate some data in here or change something in my R file, and just as a test, and it's going to set my working directory automatically for me based on this command. Which means that you don't need to be manually setting working directories, and it keeps all of your data a lot cleaner, especially when you have a lot of copies of stuff. I'm going to delete those because they're irrelevant. So this command that I'm using here requires this library, rstudio.api. You're going to see whenever I use packages, I'll always call them out as library, and then I'll call the line above as the installer for it. So like my system's already set up where this library is already installed. It's just going to run through quickly. If it fails on you because you don't have that package installed, uncomment the line above. Fair enough. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear my plot window, like we've already got done here. Because R keeps all the old plots until you clear it. Let's say that you started with working on something and you had to make a change because reasons. You don't want to keep all your old plots in the queue here on the right hand side. You just want to clear them out. That's what graphics.off does. And then clear the console. I've got junk down here. It's in my way, I don't want to see it. That's what these 2 commands do. If you're running on a Mac, these 2 may get a little flaky. So put my breakpoint in, Control-Shift-S. We get to see and hit next. Clear my environment, we already did that. Install my library. Set my working directory. What the heck?